Alright, hey guys, welcome to another quick take video. If you couldn't tell by the title and potentially the thumbnail, I don't know what I'm titling this or what the thumbnail's gonna look like at this point, but if you couldn't tell, we're gonna be talking about a few specific theories of mine and just sort of going over them. Well, they're not necessarily me specifically, but that I've talked about. And we're just gonna sort of be talking about them and seeing how my opinion may or may not have changed on these topics, while also kind of just like giving a refresher on these. So instead of going through all of my previous theory videos, which there aren't a ton, there's 13 videos, I have the playlist up. Instead of going over all of them, which would be feasible but would take quite a bit of time, more time than I'm allocating to a quick take video, I thought I would cover just sort of 3 of them. One of them I said I was going to talk about, and then I got caught up with other things and I never got to it, but we're coming back to it. People have been kind of asking. I'm coming back to it. We'll talk about it. I'm going to briefly go over the missing children's incident theory videos because I made 2. I'll briefly go over those again, share my thoughts on those again, and just sort of talk about that briefly because I said I would. So I'm going to talk about that quick. And then the 2 sort of main ones that we're going to focus on is Burn Trap versus the Mimic, although it's less about the Mimic and more about just Burn Trap and Glitch Trap being William Afton. So we'll talk about that briefly. And then I also want to talk about Molten MCI and that whole conundrum thingy there. So those are going to be the 3 things we're talking about. And for those who may not remember, a little bit of a refresher here, these quick take videos are unscripted, just me sitting down talking. And so if it sounds like I'm rambling or it sounds like whatever, then that's exactly what's happening. So if it sounds a bit unprofessional, that's kind of the point. These are quick takes. So anyway, with that being said, let's start it off. And I want to start off with the missing children's video theory thing, whatever. So I've made 2 videos on why I thought that there was only one missing children's incident, and the most recent one I made had quite a few comments talking about evidence, stuff like this, and stuff that I've never heard of before. Not that, and I kind of worded that weird. Not that that's bad. It's just stuff that I hadn't heard of. So it's new information that I hadn't heard of. That's a much better way of wording it. So it was new information I hadn't heard of, and I was like, well, I didn't think about this before. So let's, take a deep dive into this. And some of the evidence was still from FNAF 2, and a little bit of it, I'll admit, was probably just as skeptical as some of the stuff that I talked about. Like, I brought up the Night 6 phone call. I really don't think that can be used as evidence of anything because it's so ambiguous. Like, people go, well, somebody in a suit, he was messing with the animatronics in the back. That clearly means that it was William Afton, doing the missing children's incident and stuffing kids in the suits. But it's so ambiguous that it doesn't really mean anything. Like, I use it as it's probably William Afton tampering with the animatronics to try to figure out what's going on with them. Like, hey, they're acting kind of funny. What's the deal with these guys? That's how I worded it, but it could also be used as anything else. I think that the Night 6 phone call should not be used as evidence because it's so dang ambiguous that you just don't know. So I'll take a little bit of responsibility on that one for kind of trying to not manipulate. That's not the right word, but like project my own theory thoughts onto the phone call. But I think everybody does just because it's so ambiguous. So Night 6 phone call, I think on both sides just can't really be used because like it doesn't say anything about, kids going missing or anything at all, but it also doesn't give you any information. Well, I'm still a little bit skeptical. At this point, I'm more so on the bandwagon of, can we just maybe get some sort of closure on this? Like, I just want something. Whether or not it's confirmed that there is a second one, whether or not it's confirmed that there's not a second one, at this point, I don't really care. I just want confirmation. If there is a second one, cool. Thanks for giving us confirmation on that. If there's not, cool. Thanks for giving us confirmation on that. Like, I just want to know. Okay, like that's where I'm at. Like, I just want confirmation. And yeah, that's basically my whole viewpoint on that. One more brief thing I'll touch. What? I don't know what the heck. I don't know why I stopped. One more thing I'll touch on with that topic, though. Some people left the week before interactive novel as like evidence and stuff gets brought up in there. I've not read those books, so I can't really, talk about the information. I trust you guys. I'm not saying you're giving false information. I trust that the information given was true. I just haven't read it, so I don't know the full context and the full information behind it. I also don't know the canonicity of these books. That's another big thing that's coming up, and I'm making a whole book video, except I won't be talking about those because I don't know them, so I can't speak on books that I've never read or don't know anything about. So the canonicity of these books is what I'm questioning, because if they're all independent books, just all happening to be part of an interactive novel series, but like it's not an actual series of books akin to something like Fazbear Frights where they're all connected in the same universe, if they're just separate different stories but all under the umbrella of interactive novels, then I think the canonicity of it could potentially be pretty solid. But if all the interactive novels are part of some interactive novel like universe, then they're for sure not canon, because you have that Return to the Pit book, which isn't canon. So if they're part of a bigger series, then they're not. But if they're just independent stories, then the canonicity of it could be true. I just can't really speak on that because I don't know. So if anybody has any information about like that kind of stuff, please feel free to let me know. But I just wanted to say that my mind is now more open on this topic than it was before. So I guess as a whole, I'll admit that I might potentially be wrong. But my mind has definitely been more open on this topic. And I think at the end of the day, I just want confirmation on this. So that's what I'll say about that. We spent a little bit more time than I wanted to talking about that, but that is okay. So that's for that one. Next, I want to talk about Burn Trap and Glitch Trap. Now, this is one that people, I don't know if they still talk about. I really am not up to date with like the modern what people are talking about for FNAF theories. But I know that there's this big thing about trying to make them not William Afton. Like, at first, everybody was like, Burn Trap's the Mimic, and then Glitch Trap's the Mimic 01 program. They're not William Afton. We don't want him back, so it's not William Afton. They have to be something else. And then, basically, everything just confirmed that Burn Trap is William Afton, because he's not the Mimic. Like it's pretty confirmed that he's not the Mimic. I would say probably based on Ruin and Secret of the Mimic, I think kind of just confirms that Burn Trap isn't. Also, there's a teeny weeny bit of information in the absolutely untrustworthy character encyclopedia that might shed some light on this topic, at least what people were, had the mindset of on this topic. But you'll have to wait for the actual book review video for that one. But I think Burn Trap is pretty clearly just supposed to be William Afton. He's a further degradation of Scrap Trap and Spring Trap after the Pizza Sim fire, and he's just back. And I think a big thing with that is that they just kill him off and he's never seen again. If he was supposed to be something bigger, I think they would have done more with him. But the fact that the only times you see him is he shows up and he's doing his little wiggly fingers and then he dies, or he's in a little bit of a comic strip in Ruin, I think it goes to show that he's just William Afton, and since everybody didn't want him back, they just killed him off. So I think that's a big thing, or at least that's how I kind of see it with that. And then Glitch Trap is a little bit more of not an iffy, but a little bit more of like there's a little bit more to it. The whole idea was that Glitch Trap is some version of the Mimic program, but I definitely think that Secret of the Mimic proved that wrong. Now, the idea was that Mixes is also Glitch Trap, which Mixes is now Fiona / Mimic 01. So whether or not any remnants of Glitch Trap got put into there, or if it's just independent, I can't say. But I think it's fairly evident that Glitch Trap is just William Afton. That's also hinted at a little bit in the character encyclopedia, which is all not great info, but I do think that Glitch Trap is supposed to be William Afton. it definitely gives off the same vibes that they were building up in the Fazbear Frights books, which aren't canon. And I'll talk about this in that book review, but they're not canon, but there can be some similar story elements between the two. Like, they don't have to be exclusive to each other. So the idea that William Afton was coming back as a big villain was definitely hyped up in those books, and then they just killed him off, probably because nobody wanted William Afton to come back. I feel like I'm the only one that thought that would be cool, but nobody wanted him back, so they killed him off. And it was a very kind of similar, not super similar, but glitch trap kind of existed in the form of William Afton's spirit just kind of clinging on to a bunch of random crap, and then he comes back as this big trash rabbit, and then he dies, which is very similar to how Glitch Trap and Burn Trap are, where Glitch Trap was set up as this creepy thing that's like haunting people and causing all this crazy stuff, and then he shows up as a corpse rabbit, and then he dies. So I'm not explaining everything perfectly here, and like I said, it's all unscripted, so it's whatever. And I think definitely you can look into things more, but I feel like how each character is treated definitely shows that it's supposed to be William Afton, because Bird Trap shows up for one game and he's dead. Glitch Trap shows up and he's supposed to be the next big villain. He's supposed to be William Afton coming back, and then nobody wanted him to come back, so they said, shoot, what do we do with a character that nobody wants? Well, we won't put him in Security Breach. We won't put him in Ruin, because they don't want him there. But he's like a help wanted villain, so he has to come back and help wanted too. Ooh, I know. We'll just kill him off there. I think the fact that both Glitch Trap and Burn Trap just get killed off in their games is just fairly evident that they're just William Afton, and that Steel Bull and Scott no longer had any plans for them, and instead of just ignoring them, they just killed them off. And then they go, well, there you go. Now you don't have to worry about it anymore. Your characters are killed off and you don't got to worry about them coming back. So I think that's kind of what happened there. And I think it's just fairly evident on when you're actually like look at the picture as a whole that Glitch Trap and Burn Trap are just William Afton. There was another theory I saw. I haven't seen much on it. It's like, it was called like the VST theory. I don't know how big of a theory it was. But it was this idea that Burn Trap was actually some other Springlock victim from like the early days of Freddy's, and then he got Springlocked and trapped, and then that's why he's there. And I'm like, that just doesn't make any sense though. like it's kind of an interesting theory to be like, oh, you know, the first Springlock victim, but it's not William Afton. No, it's kind of cool. But like, that would be kind of a letdown if you're like, all right, I'm playing Security Breach, I'm doing the Burn Trap ending, we're gonna go up against this big villain, and then it's like, actually it's just, you know, Blake from State Farm, you know, like he's just the knockoff, he's just the guy that's there, you know. Like it's just a little bit weird. Like it's just your neighbor Bob from down the street, like it's just some guy. And I just feel like that would just totally take away from anything Burn Trap has, which is like already very limited. He shows up once and he does some wiggly fingers, and that's about it. It already takes away from that if you just, you know, say, oh, well, he's actually just some random bloke. So, I don't know. That was just something I wanted to talk about as well. Like, why would it be some random guy? It just doesn't make any sense. So, that's kind of my Burn Trap, Glitch Trap, ramble thingy there. So, hopefully you guys understood something from that. I'm hoping you did. And then we'll move on to this last one here, which is Molten MCI. So the theory of Molten MCI is one that I've never believed in, like, ever. And that's the idea that Molten Freddy is / the Fun Times are actually, you know, possessed by the missing children, and William Afton took the endos and melted them down and then made the Fun Times out of the original animatronics. But there's a few small little teeny weeny issues with the theory, and that's the fact that like none of that makes any freaking sense. So that's a little bit of a downside there. We'll go over everything again. First of all, timeline wise, sure, we don't have a solid timeline on things, but we know that William Afton was dismantling the original animatronics, and then he dismantled the fourth one, or Foxy, or whoever the fourth one is, and then he comes back the next day, and then he gets spooked, and then he gets spring locked. So, and we see the spirits there. We see the spirits physically there. Also in FNAF 3, the spirits are let free, but then it also comes back in Pizza Sim, so that's another weird thing there. But that's a whole nother can of worms. So we know that William Afton didn't really get the time to do anything with them, unless he dismantles the 4 animatronics and then leaves for like a couple years, like a long freaking time, and then comes back and then dies, which I don't think is supposed to happen like that. The other bigger counterpoint is that this would have to imply, because if he gets spring locked after FNAF 1, that's when everybody says that these mini games take place, which make the most amount of sense. If it takes place after FNAF 1, so he dismantles them, and then you're telling me that he dismantles the animatronics, and then he goes and he creates all of the Funtime Band and the sister location bunker, which existed back in early 1980s around FNAF 4. So unless he has the time traveling ball pit, I don't see how he can have this happen. Unless he built the bunker and then just built none of the animatronics until after the first FNAF game, and then he built the Funtimes and then he died. Like, that's the kind of the hard part with sister location, is it's so hard to figure out where it's supposed to fit in. However, I don't see how timeline wise William Afton can dismantle the FNAF 1 animatronics that didn't exist until after he created the Funtimes, to take those animatronics, melt them down, and then make the Funtimes. The other idea is that he does that and then infuses the Funtimes, I think, is another idea that's floating around there. But, like, again, how does he have the time to do that if he gets spring locked on the 5th night that he comes back? I just don't see how that's possible, like, in the slightest. So timeline wise, I think it's very clear that it just doesn't freaking line up like that. And I think, kind of touching on not more like evidence against it, but why people think this way is for 2 reasons. There's 2 reasons why people think Molten MCI exists. And they're pretty lackluster reasons at best. So the first reason is that in the one of the pictures that doesn't show up in the game, but it's like the blueprints for Molten Freddy, it says that he's got a lot of remnant, which would also make sense because presumably the Funtimes are still going around to parties and capturing and killing kids. So presumably that could also be where the remnant comes from. And the other bit of evidence comes from the absolutely awful book of the 4th Closet, where in the 4th Closet there's only 2 Funtime animatronics that actually kind of show up. Well, there's 3, but Circus Babies, we're not getting into that. But Funtime Freddy and Funtime Foxy show up, and they're kind of possessed by the missing children. However, I would like to add that the only reason that they did that in that book is to bring the missing children back. And there's no real story reason for it. What happens is the missing children were melted down and then put into the Funtimes for some inexplicable reason. And then some events happen, and then eventually they all figure out that William Afton killed them, and then they kill William Afton. Yeah, so there's really like nothing to them being there, except for the fact that I feel like Scott just wanted to bring them back because they were kind of like leftovers from other books. So I just feel like that's kind of the major reason, but that's where everybody gets their ideas of Molten MCI from, is that it gets brought up in the 4th Closet. And of course, as we all know, the 4th Closet is gospel truth, and it just obviously that happens. The sarcasm aside, the 4th Closet is a very bad book, and as we all know, though, the books have nothing to do with the games. There can be similar elements and stories and characters that are connected, you know, like Henry and Charlie show up in Pizza Sim, but they're from the books, so there can be similar characters, but we know that it's not at all the same story. Like, just clearly, the story is not anywhere near the same. So I think when you look at it, and I'm kind of like, you know, rambling and fumbling here, but when you look at Molten MCI, as a whole, and you take away the fourth closet book, and you just look at what we get in the games, any evidence we get in the games, there's no evidence in the games that Molten Freddy is the missing children, like, at all. There's no evidence for any of that. And I think another big thing that I think should also be taken with some level of acceptance, especially since people like to use cut content as evidence. If we're going to use cut content as evidence, I'd like to turn your attention to Logbook Chica, who was supposed to be another character in Pizza Sim. Now, that's kind of questionable, but there's a heck of a lot of evidence that's supposed to show that there was supposed to be another character in Pizza Sim. There's gameplay for a scrapped animatronic. Also, there's a bunch of mini games that tie into missing kids, particularly the puppet, but then there's also Susie's mini game. So wait a minute, there's concepts for a character that would look like they'd fit in for Pizza Sim. There's a mini game specifically tied to Susie, and there's evidence of a scrapped animatronic that didn't make it into the game. That looks like evidence enough to me to show that Chica was supposed to show up in Pizza Sim. And that would immediately debunk any idea that Molten MCI exists, because if Susie is possessing Chica, then how the heck is she part of Molten Freddy? Unless it's split spirits, but I don't think that's where that was going. So I think at the end of the day, for Molten MCI, I think it's fairly evident that it just doesn't exist. Also, I don't know why. Like, there's nothing that shows it, and there would be no reason to have it there. But I think at the end of the day, if people really genuinely believe it, you're just going to go back and forth, and you're not going to convince anybody. Like, we could go round and round and around the merry-go-round, and if you just don't believe that, or if you just so wholeheartedly believe that Molten MCI exists, like, I ain't going to be able to convince you. Just like how if you wholeheartedly believe it exists, you're not going to be able to convince me that it does. Like, we're just gonna go around in this circle. So to kind of wrap up this video, this rambly mess of a video of me just kind of rambling and ranting about nonsense, I'm talking about FNAF theories here. I think at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, if you put your heart and soul into a theory that you really believe is true, I don't think there's going to be any convincing anybody that it's not. Also vice versa. Like, nobody, the second missing children's incident, I will admit I am turning around on. So that one, hey, you guys are turning me around on that one. Good. You know, I'm learning something new. There's new evidence. There's new that kind of stuff. But I think stuff of, like, if people try to convince me that Burn Trap isn't William Afton, or that somehow Molten Freddy / the Fun Times are the missing children, like, you're just not going to convince me on that, and I'm most likely not going to convince you on that. And that's just how, like, this sort of thing works. So at the end of the day, I think if you guys have any counter arguments, any stuff like that, obviously leave them down in the comments. I would love to talk to you guys down in the comments. Obviously, if we keep it nice and respectful, much appreciated. But I'd like to talk to you guys about these things. If you agree, if you disagree, whatever, just, you know, leave your thoughts down in the comments, and we can have a nice friendly discussion, which, despite the fact that this isn't a discussion video, that's stuff I like to do here. So feel free to leave your thoughts on these down below, and we can just talk, and I'll try my best not to convince anybody, seeing as, like, that's kind of hard to do. Unless you guys are convinced, then we can talk about that. But if I missed anything, if there's other evidence, obviously leave that down below, and we can kind of discuss that. But I don't know, I just thought it'd be fun to do some ranting and rambling about theories. I haven't done that in, like, a little while, aside from the missing children's one, but, you know, that was a specific case. I haven't been able to talk about a random variety of I don't know where I was going with that, a random variety of theories in a while. So yeah, it's just kind of nice to do this kind of thing. So again, leave your thoughts down below, and we won't really do too much of a major you know, outro here. We'll do a little bit of one. I'll do a little bit of shameless plugs. We'll just do the channel member shout out, to be honest. I mean, all the plugs are down below if you want to check them out, but we'll just shout out the channel members. So here's the shout out. You guys get one in every video if you become a channel member, so you're gonna want to do that. And thank you guys who are my channel members. You know, thank you so much, and here's your video shout out. But you know, thank you for being my members, and yeah, here's your video shout out. And yeah, we'll just kind of wrap things up here. Thanks for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this kind of rambling mess of a quick take. That's what these usually are, which is kind of fun. So I hope you enjoyed it. And for your questions of the day, question number 1. What did you think about the 3 theories that I talked about here? What are your thoughts on the 3 theories that I talked about? So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is what is your favorite type of cookie? We'll go with that. What's your favorite type of cookie? So answer those 2 questions down below. And with that, I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.